Hey guys, welcome to the Bethel Park Live Well Speaker Series. My name is James Knight. I am the Recreation Program Coordinator with Bethel Park. Today we are with Becky Lasser. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
So today we're going to be talking about mental health and the mental health aspect when it pertains to youth athletes, correct?
Correct. So we're going to have a conversation today about mental health advocacy and awareness as it pertains to a student athlete. But these are strategies, information, and honestly concerns that we should all have as a community, whether it relates to a student athlete, a child, a parent, a peer, a coworker. I think that we're getting a lot more conversation around mental health right now, which is great, and as we should, because it's proving to be a pretty serious crisis point in this country right now.
Oh yeah, when I was a kid and doing mental health, or essentially doing youth sports, mental health played a huge role, whether it be getting in your mind too much or the aspect of just looking at the one common error that I was doing and just couldn't get past it. So I completely understand, I completely agree. So getting a little more into it, what got you mostly interested in the advocacy aspect of the mental health era or mental health portion for youth athletes?
So I'm in my 15th year as a head coach at Bethel Park High School, but I've been coaching student athletes in this region at the varsity level for over 20 years. So I have watched the profile of the student athlete grow, change, evolve during that time. I've watched the profile of the parent of the student athlete, the community profile change during that time. And I think for me personally, one of the things that really brought it, when you deal with kids as much as I do, you have had all those conversations about getting too much in your head, focusing too much on your mistakes, and let's shift that mindset a little bit because that's going to help with your long-term success more. But I've also dealt with kids that were struggling when we talk about mental health, more of an actual anxiety, depression that's affecting their everyday lives. So last year, about this time, the NCAA was finishing up and getting ready to release a large study that they did on mental health and student athletes at the college level. They surveyed almost 10,000 athletes across every sport, division, gender, and they found out that although a majority of athletes in both men's and women's sports, it was 63 for men, 65% for women, were well aware of the resources that existed on campus for them to seek assistance if they needed it. Well less than half in both sports actually felt comfortable seeking those resources out and actually utilizing them. Now, they cited everything from, I don't know what my coach is going to say about it. I don't know what my teammates are going to say about it. I don't know what my family or my friends are going to think about it, all the way down to what probably holds a lot of people back, which is this concept that I don't know anyone who's ever sought assistance and support for mental health issues. So there is this big, scary, almost like a monster in the closet idea around sort of actually taking that Band-Aid off and looking at what you're really dealing with and facing some of those issues. So it ran the whole gamut as to why they didn't feel comfortable seeking those resources, but it was pretty clear that although they knew where they were afraid to access them. And we also saw from the period of March to, I don't even think it was May 1st last year, 5 different NCAA athletes take their own lives. So, and the media gave that a lot of coverage, which was a positive thing that we brought that into light that this is happening. And part of removing the stigma is talking about the real flashpoint issue of mental health issues, if gone untreated, will ultimately, in many cases, lead to an extreme change in that athlete's life, meaning needing hospitalization, needing to leave the sport or school altogether, and obviously the worst case scenario being them no longer being with us on this earth. And working, it was a real moment for myself and my staff, and we lost a Division I softball player who went to South Fayette, and my assistant at the high school, Taylor Hendel. She is a school counselor in the South Fayette School District, so it was really on the tip of their, the front of their minds in that school district, and it definitely brought to us, we have to start having more conversations with kids in general, with student athletes in general. I mean, we all need to be having more conversations and checking in with ourselves and our friends and our coworkers and our teammates. But we do a lot of training already with our kids around leadership, and we partner with the One Love Foundation to do training on healthy relationship, boundaries and boundary setting and romantic relationships. So this was just an opportunity to sort of piggyback off of a lot of the other stuff we were already doing with them and put a real push on mental health. And we did it with our high school team. And then I also own Intrepid Girls Lacrosse Club. So we serve girls lacrosse players from 4th and 5th grade all the way up through graduation out of high school. A lot of these kids that go on and play in college for us come back and work in the summer. So we have another broader audience then once the summer comes to continue this work, to continue these conversations, to continue that advocacy.
Okay, that's honestly amazing.
Well, thank you. It's a passion project for sure.
I mean, 100%. So what were the initial steps you and your coaching staff took once you decided, once you noticed the issue and decided to take the appropriate steps and actions to go into this mental health aspect? What steps did you guys look into, or what resources did you use?
So as I said, we do every spring with our kids. The One Love Foundation is an organization started by Yardley Love's parents. Yardley was killed in a domestic violence incident with her ex-boyfriend while she was a Division I lacrosse player at the University of Virginia. And her family started a foundation as a result of that terrible, tragic situation, where they provide resources, training, advocacy, and access for coaches, parents, teachers, counselors, friends, anyone, to have conversations about positive relationship dynamics. Because when you think about it, parents may set the tone of, well, you can't date till you're 14 or 15 or 16 or whatever. But in most cases, I don't know how deliberate we are in how we prime them to enter the dating world, right? So we just sort of send them out there like, oh, you're 16, you can have a boyfriend or a girlfriend now. But kids are basically going to emulate whatever dynamics they are seeing in television, on movies, with their friends, or at home. And we all know that all of those messages aren't necessarily always going to be the way that we want them to be operating. So the One Love training that we do every spring sets them up to have conversations about boundary setting, about the sort of behavior that is acceptable and unacceptable from your partner, and how to have those conversations with your partner, how to spot red flags, how to have conversations not just with your partner but with your friends. If you see your friend engaging in behavior either as the person who's doing it or the person who's being subjected to it, how to spot it, and what do you do about it when you see someone engaging in behavior that isn't healthy. So we do that every spring. And last spring, we decided to add on to that some more really specific, intensive conversations about your own personal mental health. And Taylor, who's an assistant coach for me at Bethel, she played at Bethel. She is a great resource because she is a school counselor. So she also came armed with a lot of ideas, strategies, and I think part of it was, yes, the ideas and the strategies and the resources are super important, but also making sure that the young people in your life or the people that you love and care about know, I'm here to listen. I'm here to support you in getting help if you need it. And we have a pretty open door policy with our kids at the high school. So wanting them to hear it again, because I think sometimes you say it until they get it, right? In coaching or in any communication experience with someone, and wanting them to understand that there are a lot of resources in this building, there are a lot of resources in the community, and we are fully prepared to bring every single resource to bear to support you, but you have to let us know that you're struggling. And also talking to them about how to self-assess when something is becoming a minor issue to a more serious problem, and helping them start to recognize that in themselves, recognizing that in their peers, arming them to sort of be reflective and to be able to be self-starters in their own mental health support journey. So that's really how it got started. And then, like I said, that expanded out into the club world through Intrepid, where we were able to have the same conversations now with kids from nearly every school district in Western Pennsylvania, all ages, kids that are varsity, everything from varsity starters that are committed to playing college to freshmen who just played their first spring season of high school lacrosse, and having rich conversations with them. And I think that we often underestimate how savvy, how articulate, how bright these young people are when it comes to talking about topics that we generationally may look at as being taboo or something that no one's ever really had a candid conversation in our friend group about or in our family about. But the kids are smart. And they want to they want to really dig in on real topics and real conversations. And they will have very candid exchanges with each other and with their coaches when you create an environment where they feel empowered to do that. And it's like, we're coming with the resources. We're the adults that are showing up and telling you, like, it's okay to not be okay. And this is some of the things you can do. And these are some of your resources. But when you engage with these communities that are actually dealing with these issues on a regular basis and give them the chance to talk amongst themselves and to have a platform and an environment where they can be vulnerable and have true, honest exchanges about their experiences, you will see them touching on getting deeper in it than you ever thought, touching on things that you didn't even think to mention, bringing up aspects of it that probably never occurred to you as an adult. I mean, it's been a while for a lot of us since we've been 15. And we were never 15 in the current world with social media and all the pressure that kids face today that never existed for any of us when we were in high school. So bringing them to the table has been the best part of it, because you can give them a handout with resources, you can send them an email with links, but engaging with them, they make the conversation so much richer and so much more effective for their peers. And I would imagine that you could create that environment in a lot of places, in family homes, in work groups, in social groups, if you are working. And it has to be a deliberate practice of really trying to create an environment where you can talk about anything, you can be vulnerable. This is a safe place to share your experiences and to, ask for help.
Okay. Yeah, I agree 100%. The social media realm has definitely caused a lot of issues, especially it helps a lot. It leaves more gateway towards that mental health. So being able to connect with people one-on-one, it lacks the one-on-one connections anymore.
Correct. And it gives them a chance to be human beings in totality again, instead of just a face on a screen.
Oh, agreed. So why do you think the issue of mental health supports awareness, or the mental health support awareness, is so crucial for student athletes in particular?
So we see a unique profile present in student athletes, and I'm not saying this isn't present in any other students in the building, because it most certainly is. But what you see with student athletes are typically they are your hardest chargers and highest achievers in the building. And I don't just mean in grades and touchdowns. I mean, they are doing the most all the time, right? So I know most of my kids in my high school programming, in my club programming, they are playing multiple sports. They're in AP and honors classes. They also are holding down jobs. They are doing extensive community outreach and community service. So they have all these balls in the air that they are constantly juggling. And we're watching them do it seamlessly, effortlessly, right? And we're looking at a kid and we're saying, wow, they're starting every game. They're getting straight A's. They must be doing fine, right? They're killing it, right? This kid is thriving. And what we don't also always think about in those situations is the fact that those kids are also usually the most trained to self-assess, because they have to see, how'd I do on that play? How'd I do in that sprint? How's my conditioning going? They're setting goals in the classroom and on the field, and they are charging towards them. Like, I want to start varsities, and then they're figuring out how they're going to do that. And then once they start varsity, it's like, all right, well, now I'm a starter. Like, I want to be the highest 3 scorers, and now I'm going to attack that goal. So they're relatively, for the most part, pretty driven, pretty self-reflective in their drive and in their goal chasing. But the other aspect of it is most student athletes are used to performing when they are not at 100%. So they are used to going out on the field, like, I have a nagging ankle injury, but I'm cleared for activity. Like, I can play. It hurts a little, but like, I can go out there and do it, coach. Like, I don't want to sit because my shoulder, I don't want to sit. We've had a lot of awareness around concussion treatment now that we didn't have, 5-10 years ago. And I've seen that a lot, obviously, in lacrosse and how that has grown. And student athletes are used to not being at 100% and still performing like they are, and still putting on a face and putting on a mask and going out and executing. And how many times do we not want the other team to know that we're hurt? We don't want them to see that, like, I'm limping. We don't want them to realize that, like, maybe pressure them a little bit more on their left side because their shoulder's bothering them. We don't want to give anything away. So they're used to looking like they've got it all together and they are ready to just perform and execute and not actually being okay. So it creates this environment where they are used to internalizing and masking struggles, pain, challenges for the benefit of their performance from a public view, whether that be mom, dad, coach, newspaper writer, scout for college. And so they are in this situation where they are used to maybe not doing so great and not letting that on to everybody around them. And they're also, because they are being scrutinized by coaches for more playing time or to be moved up, to the next team, or college scouts that are there to watch them play, or watching their progression and pursuing them potentially as a recruit. Newspaper, the amount of intense coverage that exists in the press around more high profile programs and teams and sports and players. And there is also, some parents put an immense amount of pressure on their kids with how they perform on the field from, maybe unhealthy strategies around their performance. I mean, I've heard parents tell kids, well, you'll get $20 for each goal, or you can only go to this on Saturday if you win this many face-offs this weekend. And it's like, which, from a coaching perspective, creates an environment where the kid becomes about their own goals and not the team goals. And, I always encourage parents to ask their daughters, and then I will tell your daughter also, have patience when they ask these questions. Find out what the game plan is. Find out what you're actually trying to execute out there. Take a interest in understanding what's happening on their roster, what they're being coached to do, because I think it's always unfortunate when a kid has to choose between making me happy with what the game plan is for today, or making a parent happy about what they've personally motivated or attempted to motivate them to do that may be outside of our game plan. No matter what, that kid's going to let somebody down. They're either going to do something that's going to hurt their playing time with me, or they're going to do something that's going to potentially lead to, that ride home from the stadium not being so great because you didn't do what you were supposed to do in order to, go to this birthday party or whatever, or this concert or whatever. So these kids are getting pressure from every angle, and they're used to acting like it doesn't bother them. And they will feel, and then there's also the other side of it is like, okay, so I say, I'm not okay. I need help. I've got to take a pause, whether that's pause from sports, school. I need to get some treatment, whether that's just I need to see a counselor. They're worried about, what does that look like to my coach? What does that look like to my parents? What does that look like to the press when I'm not starting a game and nobody's giving an explanation why? What's that look like to the recruiter who I now have to tell I won't be playing on Friday and they were coming to watch me play? So they feel this immense amount of pressure from all directions to perform. And we also have to remember that at the end of the day, we are talking about 16, 17, 18-year-old children. They have not had, some adults can't handle that, and nor should they have to necessarily. So we're asking kids to do a lot of adult things earlier and earlier with what the children in the equation can perceive as larger and bigger fallouts and consequences if they don't perform. So it is pressure, it is the ability to handle it and make it look like everything's fine. So they are, and it's the concerns about actually outcrying that they are struggling and what that's going to mean for their career or their standing in their team or their perception in the eyes of their parents or a prospective college coach. But the positive side of that, because there is always a duality in life, the positive side of that is that we are seeing more and more professional athletes come out and say, I have had mental health struggles, or I'm currently having mental health struggles, and this is what I did in order to address that. This is what I'm doing to address it. We should talk about it. We should have these conversations. It is okay to not be okay. And we're seeing, Kevin Love did a lot when talking about it as an NBA player. We've seen multiple athletes talk about it in Players Tribune and do their own self-written articles about what their experiences with mental health have been. So we're seeing it talked about more, but it's only the beginning and the tip of the iceberg, I believe, in terms of the amount of information that exists that maybe isn't readily available to people. And even if it is readily available, as the NCAA study tells us, people are still afraid to reach out and grab it for fear of the unknown, for fear of how it's going to affect their public persona, for fear of how it's going to affect their standing in the team. And we have to get away from this toughen up, push through it mentality that that's okay if you want to say, well, if you want to make varsity, you have to run a mile in X amount of minutes. And if that's your goal, then you've got to push yourself to run in that amount of time. And this is how you're going to train. And if it's too hard, then maybe it's a goal that isn't, something you actually want, as it turns out, or it isn't a goal that you're prepared to work towards. The alternative is, when we're talking about mental health struggles, the idea of just toughen up, push through it, the consequences of them not meeting that goal of just pushing through or toughening up through that mental health struggle, the consequences are far larger and sometimes life-changing and life-ending if they are not able to just push through. And to tell someone, you need to just get through it. You need to push through, toughen up, come on, shake it off, don't be a baby. To have that reaction without giving this person any resources. Because if somebody came to you and said, as a coach, I really want to lift better, I want to be stronger, I want to be faster, you'd be like, all right, well, this is what you need to do if you want to reach that goal. It's counterintuitive to think that we would think that a logical response to someone coming and saying, I'm really struggling with depression, I'm really struggling with anxiety about performance on the field, that we would just say, oh, you need to push through that. You need to just man up. We're not giving them anything, any resources, any support, any help to help them deal with that issue. Whereas if they were coming and saying, I want to be faster, we'd be telling, okay, here's the best trainer to help you work on your speed. But when they're coming to us and saying, I'm having a really hard time personally, we're not saying, here's the best counselor I know for you to speak to about that. So we also, as coaches, as adults, as people that are, in charge of other communities, whether that's adult communities, child communities, teen communities, we have a certain responsibility to approach those kinds of conversations and those sorts of vulnerable moments with the people that are entrusted under our leadership. We have a responsibility to approach those situations the same way we approach, I want to get faster, stronger, bigger, be recruited higher, whatever. I mean, we would give people a pathway to improvement for nearly any skill or any issue that they say they want to overcome. But we still generally, as a society, look at the mental game, mental toughness, anxiety, depression, feeling overwhelmed as something that is just like a you problem to figure out on your own, which is counterintuitive. I mean, they don't get faster by not working harder. They're not going to heal mental health issues without support.
So going back to the masking aspect of the young athletes masking their thoughts on mental health, or masking they can just push through that aspect of it. What do you think are the biggest give and tells for parents, coaches, adults, or even friends to be able to see that there's actually a struggle going on within their athlete? What is something that they can actually tell them, or not necessarily tell them, but what aspects can they
spot?
see?
What can you see? Yeah. So we talk to. So it's a twofold conversation. So if you are someone as the person who's struggling with the mental health challenges, I would say start to take a personal inventory. Are you sleeping a lot more than you used to? Is your energy level a lot different? And you can't point to it for any reason. My nutrition's right, my hydration's right, I'm getting enough sleep theoretically, but I'm still tired every day. I don't have the general enthusiasm for the things that I used to like to do. I'm not finding joy in the things I used to find joy in. And I don't just mean the sports that you're doing or the activities that are your performance-based activities. I mean, I used to love to hike, or I used to love to hang out with my friends, or I used to love to go to concerts. And now I just don't have any interest in any of those things. Like, they're isolating a lot. They're spending more and more time by themselves. Most definitely an increased use of substances is also a red flag. Not, kids can mask that stuff fairly well too. So that's not always something that a parent may notice, but that's something that a peer may notice. Obviously none of these kids are 21. They shouldn't be drinking, but you recognize that a friend is engaging in more substance abuse behaviors, on the weekends or during the weekdays, or they're doing more dangerous behavior than what they would have done in the past. They're putting themselves in more situations that are risky that they would have never done before, because it starts to show a sort of lack of personal value for yourself. And oftentimes people will begin to engage. It's masking substance abuse, obviously, at any age in a lot of ways, but they will start to engage in these more risky behaviors because they want to feel something, because they feel nothing. An extreme sense of apathy has set in for them, and they don't understand why. Obviously, also, like, you're sadder, you are more emotional, you're more moody than you normally would be. Any of those things, you're withdrawing from friends, you're withdrawing from family. When you start to see, and I think that really peers, parents, coaches, you don't have to have necessarily some crazy, spidey sense, grades going down, teachers will see it. You don't have to necessarily have like ESP to be able to look at someone that you know well and go, like, they seem a little bit more quicker to anger. I don't see them doing the things that they used to like to do. They're sleeping a lot more. They're fighting with their siblings way more than they normally would, or their grades are dropping. It's usually just looking at an individual and saying, the way that I know you to operate is not how you're currently operating. Something is off. And having that conversation with that person, not from a, what's wrong with you? Like, you're not shooting like you used to at games, or, why are you picking on your brother? Like, you need to get it together. It's having a real understanding seeking conversation about, hey, listen, I'd like to talk to you. I'm noticing that you're not really yourself lately. And are you okay? What's going on with you? Like, you can talk to me. I want to understand why the Michael that I know is not the Michael that I'm seeing right now. And that conversation can come from a parent, it can come from a peer, it can come from a coach, a teacher, a manager. It can come from anyone. And there's no guarantee that the person immediately is going to open up and say, oh, thank God, I'm so glad someone said something. I am like really struggling. But I think that the more people in their life create an environment where they feel like they can say, I'm not okay, the more likely they are to have that conversation. And there is a suicide prevention training called QPR, and the first part of it is question. And in QPR training, it's really about, you want to literally ask someone, are you thinking about taking your own life? But the questioning aspect of that is bigger. It's continuously staying curious with someone in your life who is not acting like themselves. And just trying, sometimes they're going to shut down when you have that first conversation, and being able to say, all right, listen, I can see you don't want to talk about it right now, but this is what I'm seeing. I'm going to lay out for you some of my things that I see that are not like you. And I want you to know that if you don't want to talk about it right now, that's okay. But I would like for you to think about what I've said, and I'd like to have a conversation about it when you're ready. I'd like you to know that you can come and have this conversation with me at any time, and that I'm here to support you, and that I want you to be your best self. And I'm here to help you figure out what's going on with you and how to be your best self and how to get you the resources. I will do whatever I have to do to get you to where you need to be, but you got to meet me halfway. Continuing that conversation with them. Now, if you believe that someone is truly a danger to themselves or someone else, then we need to reach out and engage immediately with professional support and assistance. But if you think this is more of a growing issue, then continuing to have those conversations and continuing to let that person know through very consistent messaging that you think something's up and that you want them to feel comfortable talking to you about it. And that's also an opportunity for a parent to reach out, and I've had this experience as a coach, reach out to a coach and say, hey, so-and-so, she just doesn't seem like herself. This is what I'm seeing. What are you seeing? Can you keep an eye on her? Can you would you try talking to her? You guys have a great relationship. Maybe she'll listen to you. I think that if we were to be able to see down the line and know, if we were able to understand what was actually going on with our kid in that moment, and we were to know, like, they are really struggling, they are having a really hard time. If we were able to fully understand that and we were able to look down the road and see what could potentially happen and how their life is going to change if they do not have professional intervention or they don't get support, you would, if you could see all of that, if you were omniscient and you can see the outcome, right? You would at that moment begin to employ any possible resource that you thought was going to get your child to talk to someone, to seek help. I mean, who's on their team? Their coaches, their parents, school counselor, other family members that they're close to, their other parent, if they have an aunt or an uncle, grandma, grandpop that they're really close to. Who in their life cares about them and is on your support team for your kids? Because if they are in school and they're doing activities, there are more than, you're not by yourself either, parents. You're not alone in trying to get to the bottom of what's going on with your child, and you're not alone in trying to help them. Enlist your full team. I mean, you'd pull in every resource you had if you could look down the road and know, if I don't do something in a year, my child is in a completely different situation than they are right now at my kitchen table. You would do everything. And I think it's to be proactive. And it's also changing conversations in the home about mental health resources. And it's removing the stigma in your own home about seeking help. And, generationally, that is a challenge for all of us. Older generations, even those that are in middle age at this point, have probably never grew up in a home where mental health was talked about. They haven't probably had a lot of experience having conversations with people that have sought counseling or have sought medication, or who have really enlisted every resource possible to support themselves. So it's definitely changing the conversations in our household. And that's something you can do to be proactive from the jump. Like, I think my kid's fine, but in case they might not be at some point, this is what we're going to start talking about in this household. We're going to start having open conversations about, I was feeling pretty low today, or I've been struggling with this issue. I think that when we're kids, we grow up and we think that our parents are superheroes and they've never had any problems, right? And then you grow up and you become an adult and you look back on it in retrospect and you think, oh, I think my parent was struggling that whole time with XYZ because now I know about it. And I think it's showing your kids and your the people that are under you, players, even, that you are a human being, that you face struggles. I am pretty open with my kids about, like, if there's something going on in my life that I know is affecting my mood or my performance or how I'm doing, to the point of coming to a practice and being like, hey guys, I just want you to know I've had a really rough day at work. I'm going to do my best today, but if I seem a little short today or a little easily frustrated, it's not you guys, it's me. So, like, bear with me. And my kids will come and have the same conversations with me. I bombed a test today. I'm really upset about it. I'm at practice. I want to be here. This is going to make me feel better. But, like, just so you know, I am, like, not in a good headspace. And I'm like, all right, I got you. So encouraging those conversations can be a great proactive way. And then also being very attentive and knowing your kids and who they're hanging out with and speaking up when you see a change in behavior and making sure that they know that I see it, I see you, I see what's going on, and I want you to know that I'm here for you and I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to probably be like a dog, and I will tell my kids now, I'm like a dog with a bone. If I think there's something up, I'm not going to rest until you until we deal with this. Either it gets better or you and I and whoever we need to bring in have a conversation about what's going on with you.
So when it comes to the community, I heard the communication aspect of it and asking topics. So if let's say you're meeting with a group, your lacrosse groups, and you're having these communications, what is a good way of open communication so that they feel it's easier to approach you? So like topic wise, what are great topics to be able to make them feel more safe, more open, more communicative to you regarding these issues?
Yeah, I think I think that whenever you are looking to connect with someone from a resource-based acquisition standpoint, you want to establish like some authority over their experience. So we will talk to them about some basic things that student athletes are facing, like time management, because you got a lot on your plate. So let's talk about time management strategies. Let's talk about the stress and pressure that goes along with time management. I mean, we as adults have time management stress and pressures, and we're, in our 30s, like 30 and thriving, right? Like we're out here doing everything and we're struggling. So again, it comes back to that concept of like, how would we expect a 16-year-old's not going to struggle with all of that? So we talk about time management. We talk about the pressure from all outside sources for your performance in the classroom, at home, and your workplace, community service, on the field. And we talk about, then we shifted a little bit more towards them specifically as student athletes. But when I taught at West Virginia University. When I taught there, I did a course that was all about, study skills and resources for students that were struggling academically. So you can talk about performance. So getting in your head, as we talked about at the beginning, actual performance around a specific skill, whether it is just your performance in the entire game or kids who are struggling with, I like shut down when I have to shoot a penalty shot and I know everybody's watching me, or that last game, shot at the end when you're down by one and this needs to go in. I struggle in those situations, and getting them to open up and start to have those conversations communally within their teams, because it also removes the isolative aspect of anxiety. So they start to realize oh, wait, so I'm nervous about that penalty shot, but like, Joey or Maria, they're nervous too, and they're the best kid on the team, and they never miss. Like, how are they nervous? And they start to realize that this is a common human response to pressure, is to feel anxious around it. It is a rare human who never feels any pressure when they have to perform. And to get them to understand that it is normal, and it is something that everybody feels. And then also helping them to understand, when is that crossing over from a normal fight or flight response, which we all have chemically as human beings, when is that crossing over from that to a freeze response, where you are now not able to perform, not able to execute? You think about a kid who's like, when I study the information, I remember everything, but then I have to sit down and take the test, and it's like I forget everything. And that translates to the field or the court or the ice all the time. So having those conversations with them about identifying the ways that their normal physiological reactions to stress, where do we start to move from that into, okay, this is actually, you're internalizing this in a way that is not productive, it's not healthy, and helping them to learn to leave it and move past a mistake, which we get into a lot of young people I see now in sports because of the increased scrutiny, because of them feeling like there's so much riding on their athletic performance. They start to get into this perfectionist spiral where if I'm not perfect all the time, if I make one mistake, and they're thinking about a mistake that they made 2 games ago when it comes time to make that same play today. And we talk a lot with our athletes about, if you put every mistake that you made in a suitcase and tried to run around the field holding on to this bag, it's going to slow you down. And working with them to help them understand how to leave mistakes in the past, take from it what you can learn from it, but move on now to the next opportunity to apply what you've learned, and helping them to see that this is an ongoing process of development for you as a player. You look at the great sports, Michael Jordan was never satisfied. So that, and there are obviously some toxic aspects to that for student athletes, but he never really necessarily thought that he couldn't get better. Kobe was always wanting to push himself to be the best version of himself. So this idea that that's healthy, the concept of it, but an actual healthy way of putting that into play is recognizing that your development as a player is always ongoing. There is no being the best high school player, because there's always room for you to look at it as a journey that you're on. And then it's going to, maybe become a journey from a high school player to a college player. And then it could become the journey from a college player to a professional athlete. It's an ongoing journey that's going to have pit stops and exits and moments of doubt and insecurity, but it's all part of the process, and it's all part of moving on to the next stage of your development. And when you can frame it like that to an athlete who's driven to perform, you can help them understand that, okay, the mistakes are part of what is ultimately going to make me great. So I have to see mistakes as a necessary evil. I don't enjoy it. I mean, nobody likes to mess up, right? But I don't enjoy messing up. But when I mess up, what can I learn from it, and how can I apply that and turn that from a negative thing into a positive growth moment for them, is something that we focus on a lot. And healthy goal setting that is actually realistic. If an 8th grader is setting goals and says, well, my goal is to be a starting wide receiver in the NFL. Okay, well, that's a great goal to have, but we need to start in a more measurable, realistic goal today. So let's work backwards from that. And let's bring that all the way back right now to 2023 and spring preparation for your, fall football season. What can you do now to set yourself up to have the best fall season? Let's work backwards from that, and let's figure out manageable goals. And it's the idea of saying, well, right now I can bench 100 pounds. I want to bench 450. Okay, well, that's a pretty big jump. So let's get an expert involved. Let's get a lifting coach involved, and let's help them tell you what would be a realistic goal for you to have if you're going to really dedicate yourself to this program for the next 90 days. Where do they think you should be able to end up if you dedicate yourself? And, that is again, coming back to the idea that if a kid came to us and said, this is a goal I have, or this is something I'm struggling with, I want to be stronger, we would give them tools and resources, and we would help them lay out a program of how they're going to do that. And we want kids to be able to say, I'm struggling with the mental side of my game. I am feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling like I can't keep everything going. I'm feeling crushing pressure from my parents, my coaches. I don't like to do the things I used to do. I kind of just want to give up on everything. When they come to us with those outcries and that moment of vulnerability, we have a responsibility to meet them with the same sort of support outline of what we're going to do to help them address those issues.
So when it comes to addressing the issues, are there specific tools or other types of engagement things that you would provide or suggest that they would do to continuously increase and keep up their well-being?
So from a provider standpoint, so coaches, parents, I would say regular check-ins are great. We talked about fostering an environment where your kid, your player, I say my kids, I don't have any children, I'm talking about my players, where your kids feel like they're regularly being checked on, they're regularly being encouraged to say how their day was, what's going on, how are you feeling, creating an environment where you are having open conversations about yourself, about others, with others, showing them that this is a place where you can talk about these things. Athletes, again, being able to have that, take a minute. Sometimes we go, and we run, and we don't take a moment for self-reflection. We do a lot of mindfulness work with my athletes at Bethel and my athletes at Intrepid, where we want them to understand there are so many research-based, we know that mindfulness practices not only help with your general mental health, they make you a better performer under pressure, and they also help with everything from, they help with your blood pressure. So it is a all-encompassing positive. So we will take kids through guided meditations at the end of practices. The kids laugh at them at first, and by the end, it took one session for my kids to start asking, can we do mindfulness today? Can we do mindfulness at the end of practice? Especially when it's nice. They love to lay down on the turf with the sun on them and close their eyes and have 5 minutes of a guided meditation that I will take them through. You can find guided meditations on YouTube. There's apps, Spotify. I'm sure Apple Music has it too. But there's plenty of free resources out there where you just sit quietly in a room and you listen to someone take you through some stress-reducing breathing and sort of mental imagery. And I mean, there's a lot of research too around like how mentally preparing for performance, envisioning yourself doing everything the way you want it to. And we will do that as part of our mindfulness practices if we're headed into a big game. So when we practice mindfulness, it helps us use our brain. I mean, we all have heard that you only use X amount of percent of your brain's power, 40. It's like some terribly low number. But you're training your brain to work for you. You're training your brain to be a tool in your entire repertoire of executing at my best. So taking a few minutes I encourage my kids, especially if they have sleep issues. And also, I mean, I tell them, if you want to sleep more, you got to get off TikTok at 1 a.m. So monitoring, tech access is a major part of it. But do a sleep meditation every night. You'll find that if you do that enough, your brain will automatically start to slow down at bedtime and make it easier and less racing thoughts for you to relax. And the more we train our brain to function in the way that we want it to, which is to be able to be in the moment, to be in our bodies, to be aware of what we're thinking and feeling, you have those opportunities then in the stillness, in the quiet, to think, all right, this feels good, and I can now recognize how good I didn't feel 10 minutes ago, and I need to do something about that. I mean, that's a very simple tool that's super accessible with all of the apps and YouTube and all the things that exist now to help you use your mind to help you deal with stress and anxiety. But again, these are part of the bigger picture, and it's not always going to be enough. You may need counseling. You can start with your family pediatrician or doctor and talk about what's going on. They can refer you to someone who can help you approach this from both we now understand as a society that mental health issues are many, many times the result of a chemical imbalance in the brain. Yes, it can be environmental, but it can also be chemical. We know there's predispositions genetically. So you can put together a full court press, to use one of our sports analogies, right, of how to address this issue for yourself or for your kids. That involves your mental health, involves your PCP, your primary caregiver, who can help you find someone who's a mental health specialist, who can refer you to someone who can talk about the chemical options, who can talk about counseling. We can enlist teachers and other coaches to know that our kid is struggling. There are many resources in the building, if you go through your school nurse or your school counselor, where you can get state and federal mandated support systems in place if we know a kid is having an issue. And I think that parents are afraid to stigmatize their kids with some of these programs. But if the difference is stigmatizing her, which, like, let's remove the stigma, this is healthcare, right? If the choice is, I'm afraid to have this on her record that she's been seeing the school counselor, versus she's not sitting with us at Thanksgiving dinner next year because we haven't addressed this, and she has made a permanent solution for a temporary problem that she felt very overwhelmed by, every parent is going to choose the resources over the worst case scenario.
So as it pertains to the parent, what role can they fill in their student athletes, their child's just overall life, more than just a parent, to be able to entice them to actually take better care of their self through mental health and mental awareness?
I think modeling is huge, and modeling is huge in almost any aspect of raising a young person. So we have to, we tell athletes, you practice, however you practice is how you're going to perform, So parents can take that and shift that to themselves and say, I'm going to show my kid that I take care of myself. I'm going to show my kid that when I am stressed, I am doing things for myself, some self-care techniques, whatever they are, that these are the ways that I deal with stress, that there are things that I build into my calendar, into my schedule, that give me a reprieve and give me a rest from go, from hard charging. Because, many hard charging parents, like we were I'm a hard charger. I know this. I know what this life is like. So you were once a hard charging kid. Now you're a hard charging adult. You're going to be having children. You're going to be producing more hard charging people. And how do you take care of yourself? being open with those conversations with your kids so they can see, like, mom's got it all going on, dad's like achieving like crazy at work, but like I also see them prioritizing physical fitness because they, dad says, like, I go on my runs every morning and I'm doing that for myself because it makes me feel better. Or, mom prioritizes making sure that she hits her yoga every Saturday because that's her way that she resets from a busy, hectic week. Or they're prioritizing time with friends and their support system that has nothing to do with achieving anything other than just being around people who love and care about you and want to see you be good and healthy and succeed. And the more we model that behavior and the more we talk to our kids about the purpose behind why we're doing the things that we do, the more we create an environment for them where they recognize that our parents, although they are, the superheroes that we think never falter or never have a challenge, they're just like me. They've got a lot going on and they're stressed out today and they're going to do something to take care of themselves. So showing them it's okay to be stressed, it's okay to be overwhelmed. These are some of the things that I do. Recognizing, like we said, noticing when your kid seems to be acting different and you're not seeing the same Michael or the same Julia that you're used to seeing. What's going on with you? Are you feeling stressed? Is this about school? Is there something going on socially? Is this about what's going on with lacrosse or football or hockey? And, what do you need from me? Do you want to go for a walk? Like, do you want to like do something that's not a workout based on your performance on the field? Like, let's go for a hike. Let's go for a walk, or let's go do something together. Trying to have that connective moment and build more and more connective moments with your kids that are doing pleasure activities together so that they have creating an environment. And I also think that just point blank messaging is important. I love you. I care about you. I love everything you're doing. I'm so proud of you for being a straight A student. I'm so proud of you for being a starter, for being a captain. But my bigger concern is that you're okay as a person first. And you can always come to me and talk to me about anything. And if you're struggling, if you're having a hard time doing these regular check-ins, I just want to see how you're doing because you got a lot on your plate right now. Like, how are you feeling about that? Sometimes, even as adults, we will face struggles and we will think, God, I wish somebody would just like ask me how I'm doing today because I'm not doing okay. And break that isolation, break this feeling of I'm by myself and no one is asking and no one understands, and show your kids that I struggle too. This is what I do to deal with it. And I want to have regular conversations with you about how you're doing and what do you need in order to be your best self. Because I would guarantee you that if you ask most 16-year-olds, what do you need to be good every day? They can probably give you a more educated, a more enlightened, deeper response than you probably think if you create the right environment for them to do that.
Oh, I 100% agree with that. Like I think playing a huge role is the parents, just like you said, modeling. If you don't have a good model, it's hard to see exactly what you can do to improve yourself on that.
Yeah, and that's breaking generational standards. And we talk, you can go down a rabbit hole about generational trauma, and trauma gets imprinted on us genetically, and we know that to be factual now. And we're reproducing, so we're producing kids who, whether we realize it or not, are a product of whatever we have experienced. And you as parents have the opportunity at any day to decide, this cycle stops now. The not talking about what we're feeling that I grew up with and my parents grew up with and my grandparents grew up with, that is done. Like, we're going to talk about how everybody's feeling. We're going to talk about how you're doing. We're going to have conversations that are more personal about you as a human and less about your performance as a student or a student athlete. We're going to have more of those conversations in this house. And if you've never had them before, I mean, it's possible that at first it's going to be hard for you. Like, you've never talked about them as an adult. That could be a little awkward. You could feel awkward with your kid. Your kid, we all know, they're going to, at some point, are probably going to be like, oh my God, Mom, whatever. Or like, Dad, stop. But don't give up, because you could be the chain breaker. You could be the one who says, this is not gonna function like this anymore. And I'm gonna change it for my kids so that when my kid grows up, my grandkids are going to come up in an environment where when they're not doing well, they can talk to their parents about it openly at all times. And, we don't just want 16-year-olds going to other 16-year-olds to solve their problems. They are as prepared to help them deal with a lot of the issues as that individual 16-year-old who has the issue is. So we want to create more community around them where they feel like they have more adults that they can talk to without consequence. Meaning, if I tell my coach that I'm struggling, I don't believe that this is now going to lead to me not starting tomorrow. And that is a messaging issue for coaches and for leaders, and it is a messaging issue for parents as well. Figure out what you want your kid or your player to believe to be true about the environment around them, and then figure out how to A, say that regularly, and B, model that through your own behavior.
All right. Thank you so much for being with us today, Becky.
Thank you for having me.
Is there anything else that you'd like to leave us with?
I think just coming back to that original statement, and it feels heavy and it feels serious, but if you were faced with the choice of so talking to the student athlete and talking to the parent, if you knew that if this situation went unchecked in 1 year, you yourself, your life, or your family unit could look drastically and tragically different than it does today, you wouldn't care about the stigma, the awkwardness, the fear around speaking up, the consequences that you perceive might exist for you asking for help. If you could look ahead in a year and say, I may not be here, my daughter may not be here, my life may not be the same that it was before, you would do something today, and you would not allow your own maybe ingrained beliefs that you brought into the situation from your own family background, your own professional background, your own sports background. You wouldn't allow those things to stop you from saying today is the day that we are going to start addressing this problem proactively, because not on my watch is this person going to suffer in silence.
All right. Thank you so much again, Becky, for being here today. And thank you guys so much for tuning in to Bethel Park's Live Well Speaker Series. I hope you have a great night.